Hi, my name is Megan Weber. I'm a sophomore and I'm a nursing major with a Spanish minor.
Hi, I'm Jimena and I'm a freshman. I'm in pre-nursing and minoring in Spanish.
Our presentation topic is Indigenous sterilization in Peru, and we completed this research as part of our Spanish for Health Professions class.
To get started, we would like to clarify on some key terms that we want you to understand, starting off with sterilization. Sterilization is a surgery to make people unable to procreate or to have children. And then forced sterilization is just sterilization that is done without a person's knowledge or consent. And the eugenics movement is the practice or advocacy of creating an ideal society by selecting certain hereditary characteristics and to sterilize those that are looked as unfit. And then for reproductive rights, we have those are the rights of individuals to decide whether to reproduce and to have reproductive health. This may include an individual's right to plan a family, terminate a pregnancy, use contraceptives, etc.
So, there are many groups of Indigenous people that live in Peru. Indigenous people make up about 25 to 30% of the population of Peru, and there are various Indigenous languages that are spoken there. The most common Indigenous group and language in Peru is Quechua. There are many different dialects of Quechua, and many are so different that the people actually can't understand each other. The Quechua people are direct descendants of the Incan Empire, and mostly they live in and are located in Peru, but there are smaller populations in Ecuador, Bolivia, Chile, Argentina, and Colombia.
Some background and history on the sterilization in Peru. Former President Alberto Fujimori ran a campaign of expanding family planning policy and lowering poverty rates. To do this, he ran a program from 1996 to the year 2000, where more than 300,000 women and 22,000 men were forcibly sterilized. To this day, there are differing accounts about what actually happened during this time, because on one side, Fujimori denies there being human rights and reproductive rights violations, but doctors have come forth saying that they were required to fulfill a quota by certain times. Despite there being uncertainty on what actually happened, we know that many people of the indigenous population were coerced and forcibly sterilized in unsanitary and dangerous conditions, which sometimes led to disabilities or even death.
So, the current situation in Peru is very complicated. The International Criminal Court has condemned what happened in Peru, but for many women, there still has been no justice or reparations for what happened. The government and the Peruvian justice system are stalling on investigating what happened and also prosecuting those responsible for it. Because of this, along with the issue of impunity, which is the exemption from punishment or the freedom from consequences of an action, no one is being held accountable for what happened. And now in 2021, more than 20 years after this all occurred, there is now a plan for reparations for those that were affected by this.
There are many causes for why forced sterilization was a problem in Peru and is a problem in many other countries around the world. One cause of forced sterilization is human population planning. Human population planning addresses issues such as poverty, environmental concerns, religious beliefs, and overpopulation. Specifically for Peru, the goal of Alberto Fujimori was to decrease and deal with the poverty rates in Peru. He believed that lowering the birth rate would decrease poverty in the country. And another thing that affected the situation with forced sterilization in Peru was the two different realities of the policy and situation. The policy appeared very different publicly than what actually happened. Publicly, the policy was praised for doing what it sought to do, which was decrease the birth rates. However, the public was not exposed until much later to what was actually going on behind closed doors in regards to the forced sterilization of mostly Indigenous women. This was because the people in charge deliberately hid the truth from the public. Alberto Fujimori wanted this policy to appear to the public as a success, whereas the women affected by this policy wanted justice and wanted to bring the public's attention to this issue.
So, why are Indigenous people being affected by forced sterilization more than others? The concepts of eugenics and hygienics are one reason for this. Eugenics refers to the study of how to arrange reproduction within the human population to get certain desirable heritable characteristics. The concept of eugenics has been discredited throughout the 20th century as being unscientific and racially biased. Hygienics refers to the prevention of illness and maintenance of health within a population. Both of these concepts, combined with things such as ableism and classism, have led to the forced sterilization of many minority groups around the world. Specifically, classism combined with eugenics is the belief that people of lower classes or people with less money should not be allowed to reproduce because of their income. Many minority groups fall into this category of people with less money because of a history of oppression. Many people who subscribe to this ideology have the stereotype that people with less money are either not as intelligent or not as capable of being a parent as someone with more money. This stereotype has no scientific basis and is very harmful to many people around the world. Another thing that has contributed to why Indigenous people are disproportionately affected by forced sterilization is the marginalization of women and Indigenous people and the stereotypes that go along with that. This means that in this case, women and Indigenous people are often treated as insignificant or less than within a population. The patriarchal system and values, along with sexism and misogyny, and the concept of machismo, which is related to toxic masculinity, all promote false and negative stereotypes about women, as well as about Indigenous people as a whole. This marginalization and these negative stereotypes also affect women's reproductive rights. In many countries, women still do not have full reproductive rights and the freedom to reproduce when and how they want to.
There are many consequences and effects of forced sterilization. There are psychological effects, which include things like anxiety and depression. There are also many physical effects, which include things like heavy menstrual bleeding, severe abdominal pain, severe back pain, and weakness and issues with the lower limbs of the body. Lastly, there are also many social effects of forced sterilization. These include things such as conflicts with partner over infertility and the inability to have children, as well as conflicts within their culture. Within Indigenous culture, women are expected to bear many children. So when they're unable to do so, it creates a barrier between herself, her purpose, and her community.
So now the question is this still happening today? The answer is yes. There are many current or recent examples of forced sterilization around the world. One example is in the United States. In 2020, many human rights groups, along with a whistleblower, accused a U.S. immigration detention center in Georgia of abuse and of forcibly sterilizing migrant women. More than 40 women submitted testimonies that documented these abuses. Another current example is in China. In 2019, reports of forced sterilization and the genocide of Uyghur women came to light. This is an ongoing issue in China that many other countries have recognized and condemned. A third recent example of forced sterilization is in Canada. The Canadian government has apologized for their history of forced sterilization and have awarded reparations to many of those affected. However, in 2017, many Indigenous women in Canada were not allowed to see their newborn babies unless they agreed to be sterilized first. These examples show that forced sterilization is still a major problem that is affecting people worldwide. And then these are our sources. Please feel free to join us at the Q&A session and the discussion on April 14th.